The RPG genre has drastically changed over the years, from the time of its inception way back in '84 with Nihon Falcom's classic Dragon Slayer. RPGs have seen a lot since then, and the previous decade has gifted us with some of the best games the genre has to offer. Before we begin, I'd like to mention that this list doesn't feature all the best ones from each year, but just one. With the sheer number of incredible RPGs that have come out over the years, putting it onto a shortlist is like making an NBA All-Star team. You've got so many names to put on the court, but you know you just can't put them all in. So pardon me if your favourites aren't here. This list is a mix of my best and everyone else's. Alright, let's do this. Here are the best RPGs each year from 2010 till now. 2010, Fallout, New Vegas. Bethesda and Obsidian's Fallout franchise is so close to my heart, and I really can't choose between them, except for Fallout 76. No one likes that game that much anyway, do they? But Fallout New Vegas is my pick. It really doesn't win by much. Fallout 3 kind of revolutionized the genre in itself, and Fallout 4, even though it got a lot of slack initially, is quite easily one of my favorite games from the last decade. Although what takes the cake is Fallout New Vegas, with its distinctive Old Westy approach to the post-nuclear wasteland, game-changing decisions, and flexible ways to complete its quests. Fallout New Vegas carved out a spot as not just the best game in the Fallout series, but as easily one of the best RPGs ever made. Not to mention how terribly overshadowed it was by other games that came out that year. It's an iconic one if you ask me. Honorable mentions from 2010. Just like the Fallout series, it's really difficult to place one game from one of the best sci-fi RPG series out there. Mass Effect 2 is my pick of the lot because of how well structured every element is. From a fantastic visual experience, brilliant characters, a great storyline, and vast regions of space to explore, this game has it all. Of course, doing all of that and keeping the core RPG elements active. I must also add the game's beautiful atmosphere, excellent cinematics, and some of the most memorable characters in gaming. Mass Effect 2 has got to be one of the best modern RPGs of all time. 2011, The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim. This is one of the best games that I've ever played. It might just be the best RPG I've ever played because of how incredible it really is. The Elder Scrolls V: Skyrim is an awe-inspiring journey where there's a classic fantasy world that's your plaything. The main questline might lack in quality, but it more than makes up for it with its go anywhere and do anything ideology, and it's brilliant. Then, talking about the side quests, there really isn't a shortage of great ones in there. You can become a vampire or werewolf, join the legendary Dark Brotherhood, be a part of the Thieves Guild, and countless other unexpected opportunities as you level up and unlock powerful spells and dragon shout. It's one of the largest, most detailed RPG worlds out there, one that's itching for you to explore a little more as you play through it for the first time or even the 10th. Honorable mentions from 2011. Bastion's fantastic product of Supergiant Games, who are more recently known as the guys behind Hades. Their first game, Bastion, was a critically acclaimed action RPG, highly praised for its presentation, its design, music, voice acting, and of course its stellar gameplay. Bastion's players get to mingle with several weapons and ability skill trees as they progress through the game, unlocking more options as they progress. And of course, how could I not mention Deus Ex: Human Revolution? What an incredible game. The previous game's Warren Spector isn't attached to this installment, so fans of the original might not really like this one to be on the list, but it really doesn't take away from how amazing this game really is. Deus Ex lets players create the kind of experience they want, choose between stealth or gunplay. The protagonist Adam Jensen's roster of upgrades and abilities creates a whole bunch of possibilities. Honestly, if you haven't played this one, you really ought to. 2012, Borderlands 2. Okay, so hear me out here, okay? This one isn't really an RPG, but this is probably the closest a first-person shooter can come to the genre. Let's talk a little bit about Borderlands 2. I think a simple checklist will suffice, alright? Great characters, check. Great story, check. Great visuals, check. Replayability, heck yeah, check. RPG elements, double check. Great gameplay, check. One of the best games that you're ever gonna play. Check, check, and check. This game is quite easily one of the best games I've ever played. The best thing about it is the fact that even after the story's done, some nerve in your brain pushes you to replay again and again. In Borderlands 2, you choose to be whatever kind of hero you'd like in a world that's ridiculously absurd yet incredibly humorous. I really don't know how the devs managed to mix a blend of those two. There are legit fart jokes, sure, but there are also skill trees that offer innumerous levels of character build. Ultimately, it doesn't matter what kind of Vault Hunter you build, all that matters is that you kick Handsome Jack's butt. And trust me, you're gonna really want to. Honorable mentions from 2012. Mass Effect 3 isn't like one of the best ever, but it's still up there for me, and since the Mass Effect series is one of my favourites, without Andromeda of course, I felt the game played quite well. Although it did drift too far into cutscene land, it's still really a top-notch game and easily the best looking of the series. Diablo 3 is another game that I had a lot of fun with right up until the disappointing end, which was the overall picture with many fans of the franchise. The linearity, to be precise, of Blizzard's latest Diablo might just be its biggest negative. Still, there's a lot of fun hack and slashing gameplay that you can enjoy. There's a lot of fun to Diablo 3 even if it's not exactly the game we'd hoped for. 2013 Shadowrun Returns. This wonderful crowd-funded project makes it our top entry in 2013 because of its sheer brilliance and the firm idea that not all great games need to be AAA funded endeavors. Harebrained schemes pitched their game Shadowrun Returns on Kickstarter, asking for $400,000 to produce it, and they received almost 5 times that amount. And that's the beauty of this project, because with that kind of money, their ambitions drastically grew from what was originally intended. Long story short, I've played this game just once, and that one playthrough was epic, which reminds me, you should go ahead and get yourself a copy, and I should go ahead and replay this game. The reception of Shadowrun Returns was positive with a couple of negatives, but given that 2013 wasn't exactly the best year for RPGs, it's not surprising that this game won the Gamer's Choice Award. Honorable mentions from 2013. Dragon's Dogma Dark Arisen is an incredibly overlooked game in general. The game's truly a hidden gem for all RPG enthusiasts out there. This game needs a lot of recognition compared to what it's received over the years. It's an excellent combination of exciting, action-centric combat and extraordinarily deep RPG mechanics. 2014 Dragon Age Inquisition. Now, hear me out with this one. I know many of you will have a lot to say about this entry and how it's definitely not supposed to be on this list, or how Origins or even Dragon Age 2 were way better, but there's something about how incredible Inquisition is. I mean, yeah, Origins and 2 were amazing titles, but I just feel like Inquisition really pushed the boundaries with vast landscapes, RPG mechanics and combat. The game's side quests, even though quite terrible, can be overlooked as all of that is overshadowed by how fantastic the rest of the elements are in the game. With a slew of incredible characters, voice acting, decisions to make, and well, just an overall well-written script, the game is on a different level. The customizations on gear, skills and traits are another testament to how far we've come as an RPG-loving community. For me, Dragon Age Inquisition is by far one of the best games I've ever played. Honorable mention from 2014. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of the Souls series, even though they're genre-defining, but the game that stood out the most in my opinion was the second one. Rest assured, if you like Dark and Demon Souls, you'll like Dark Souls 2. I was skeptical at first given how I wasn't very involved in the first game, but ultimately I had an enjoyable time as I was dying over and over again to its bosses, because you know, what's a Dark Souls game without dying? Overall, it's a great game that everyone should try at least once. 2015 The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. What RPG lists complete without The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt? Think about it, I'll give you a minute. This game is easily one of, if not the best RPGs out there right now, and even after 5 years, it's still giving people goosebumps. The Witcher 3 is a game with deep lore and world building that you discover through action and exploration rather than through the direction that the game gives you. It's a game where your choices actually matter, one that will leave you thinking about its characters and their stories. The Witcher 3 might just be the best open world RPG that we've seen in modern times, and it's definitely one of my favourites, one that's not likely to be surpassed anytime soon. Honourable mentions from 2015. Bloodborne is easily one of the best Soul-like adaptations of the genre. The game quite evidently is heavily influenced by the Soul series, and the devs have done an incredible job on it. This game features a compelling story with standard RPG elements that have you dealing with 6 skill stats, and the character creator lets you design some of the coolest Victorian Gothic heroes ever. And oh, you have to check out the hats too. You have to check out those hats. Those hats are so cool. Undertale was an incredibly massive hit and did even better on the Switch. It really did put indie games as a whole on the map. This short RPG game made by one single indie developer, Toby Fox, is now one of the most popular and recognizable modern RPGs and quite easily one of the best games ever made. Its unique gameplay system has a direct impact on the game's story and ending. Its bizarre yet likable cast of characters and its deep and complex lore makes Undertale an incredible RPG game. 2016 Persona 5. Persona games have been around for a while now, and if you're not tired of them yet, allow me to present Persona 5, the best Persona game released during the last decade. Featuring a slick battle system, Persona 5 and its definitive edition Persona 5 Royal took the world by storm. Quite easily the best JRPG around. Persona 5 is by far the most well-structured game of the franchise, with the story cranked up to a different level altogether, while the graphics set a standard for visuals amongst all games inspired by most modern anime. Honorable mention from 2016. Dark Souls 3 is definitely a worthy and apt end to the Dark Souls series. DS3 went on to become the best-selling Bandai Namco game ever, selling over 3 million within 2 months of its release. And with those numbers, even if you don't like the series too much, you've got to mention it somewhere, don't you? It's a game where you have to suffer through innumerable deaths before you can enjoy the sweet taste of finishing the game. Weird, but beautiful. 2017, Nier Automata. There's something about Japanese art style that really puts me in a good mood. It's more than mildly satisfying. I'd say it's something like listening to easy listening music, but for your eyes. I know I'm not doing a good job describing it for you, but I know you kind of got it, haven't you? Nier Automata is one of those games that you'll love to look at. In fact, it's not only just that there's a lot more as well. The game mixes the best of the shoot-'em-up, text adventures, RPG elements, and brings them out in a beautiful wrap design that's something to adore. Its dazzling combat is split between 3 super cool android protagonists who twirl and flip in an almost hypnotic way, while you hack and slash away at enemies with the fury of a non-living android. Honorable mentions from 2017. Give Divinity Original Sin 2 some time and you'll know exactly why it's one of the best games ever made. It's a seamless and non-linear world with interaction lurking everywhere. You can pick an argument with your party members over a disagreement, uncool but also super cool. On top of that, the original Sin 2's quest structure is unlike anything seen in most mainstream games. There are no quest markers and focus is placed on reading and paying attention to details. It's a hardcore RPG that requires some time to get used to. Dragon Quest XI was an absolute marvel. 80 hours of pure joy that kept its feet well rooted to its origins. Great visuals, huge adventure circuits, and a quirky cast were all clearly inspired by the previous games. What a cool way to keep your fans happy. Be inspired by yourself. Incredible. The worldwide sales of over 6 million units represented a huge commercial success with a strong critical response to follow. Overall, quite easily one of the best turn-based RPGs from the last decade. 2018, Pillars of Eternity, Deadfire. A few years ago, Pillars of Eternity 2 wouldn't have even made it on this list because of the sheer number of great RPG titles we've seen over the years. The game is very similar to its main inspiration Baldur's Gate, and later with Deadfire, the game received a fully fledged turn-based combat system, allowing players to play the game at a different pace and with a tactical mindset. Other than the game being an absolute peach of an RPG, the new and improved turn-based elements put this game on the map, and I'm so glad it is. An in-depth appreciation of Deadfire will take a little longer than other games, but at the end of it, you'll be left with an emotional attachment to the game. The game has so many grand and intricate stories and character interactions that you make along the way that are sublime, all while trying to solve the issues that the storyline plays out. The plot and story are unlike anything seen in previous RPGs and are definitely worth checking out. Honorable mentions from 2018. Ever since Monster Hunter World was first announced, it was clear that Capcom was stepping up their game with the newer Monster Hunter generations. It definitely did succeed, and this is easily the biggest and best that the franchise has to offer. It's not just the comparative depth of the narrative, it also boasts almost seamless integration between combat systems that were previously incomprehensible for amateurs, making Monster Hunter World a meaningful evolution for the series at large. 2018's Assassin's Creed Odyssey took the franchise into an RPG mode where players went further into the past than ever before. Odyssey received critical acclaim for its characters, scope, setting, plot, gameplay, and story, but it was criticized for being too ambitious. The game does feel a little overwhelming sometimes, but a great game otherwise and a good RPG nonetheless. 2019, Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium is a brilliant and most definitely one of the best RPG games out there. It's fantastic to see this quality of a game that takes the age-old mechanics of tabletop RPGs like Dungeons & Dragons and twists them into a modern post-war city setting. The game's essentially a detective story where the real case you've got to crack isn't who killed the man strung up on a tree, but revolves around the investigation of ideas, of the ways we think, and of how all of us are shaped, with several degrees that only people you've played it will sort of understand. The game is uber unique and allows for role-playing in its truest sense as you create your detective's worldview. All obstacles are overcome via dialogue options and dice-based skill checks, giving Disco Elysium a more board game-ish feel compared to more action-oriented RPGs. Honorable mentions from 2019. Borderlands 3, like Borderlands 2, isn't an RPG per se, but it features all the good stuff that makes a great RPG. The game's rewarding gunplay and over-the-top humor are by far some of the best you'll ever see. Borderlands 3's character-driven narrative will satisfy long-term players as they play this finale of the loot shooter franchise. The game best continues the Borderlands borderline and delivers a humorous tale of misfits looting and shooting their way to heroism. If you finish The Outer Worlds, it will most definitely keep you wanting more. It's not a short game, but it's one packed with wonderful characters to meet, interesting places to explore, and meaningful dynamic quests to solve, that it didn't feel like you'd get tired of it. It gives you the urge to play everything all over again in a completely different way. That's Obsidian at its finest. The Outer Worlds is brilliant throughout, and it's a superb example of how to promote traditional RPG sensibilities with a modern experience. 2020, Wastelands 3. Although I'm not big on the original Fallout games, this tactical, top-down RPG's modern approach is something that really needs to be spoken about. You can see that it's heavily influenced by the OG Fallout games if you already didn't know. This fantastic game manages to tell an interesting story with interesting companions. It's one of the few RPGs that makes decisions feel like they have weight, and the character customization is great too. Blending a mix of old-school top-down exploration with tactical shootouts, Wasteland 3 has become the perfect turn-based RPG. Your character's abilities can turn the tables both in conversations and in battle. Wasteland 3 is a game where each member of your party can have a story to tell, and your direct actions will have you remembered as a hero or a villain. Honorable mentions from 2020. The YAKUZA series is quite old, but the latest entry, YAKUZA Like a Dragon, brings a lot of new with it. The game's new RPG combat system and character jobs come off really well done. Ultimately, YAKUZA Like a Dragon is a surprising RPG, one that really shows the true charm of the franchise. 2021, Tales of Arise. 2021 wasn't a big year for RPGs as expected, but we've got this fantastic looking action RPG that just came out recently and is the 17th addition to the Tales series that started way back in 1995. In true Tales fashion, the game looks straight out of a modern anime series. This edition features a brand new story and retains some of the visual nuances from the previous games, as well as most of the gameplay features, with a couple of new gameplay mechanics added. Overall, the RPG experience in this game feels like you'd probably remember through the years. Tales of Arise is on my list of games I will be getting soon. Don't hesitate to give this one a shot. So, what do you think about this list? Comment your own list down below and see which ones we have in common. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the list, do consider subscribing and hitting that like button. You have no idea how much it helps us. As always, I'll see you in the next one.